This is Between the Brackets, Episode 8, May 15th, 2018. Welcome to Between the Brackets. I'm Yaron Koren, and this is the first ever BTB Digest episode, where we'll be going through clips of the first 5 episodes. I know that listening to all these episodes takes time, so this is a way for people to sort of catch up on all the previous content. In the first episode, I listed some of the things that I didn't want to include in this podcast. I didn't want it to be a how-to guide for using Mediawiki, and I didn't want to talk about the latest news, like the latest release of Mediawiki and so on. Still, for all that, there's a lot of things that this podcast does cover. It's, of course, a look at the people involved in making and using Mediawiki, including some biographical details. It covers some tips and tricks for using Mediawiki, like how to increase usage of the wiki. And I like to think of it as compiling a sort of oral history of Mediawiki, getting the stories of people who have been using and developing the software for a long time now. So all that adds up, and there are already about 6 hours of content to listen to, and we're only 7 episodes in. Well, 8 now. That's not necessarily a lot as far as podcasts are concerned, but some people just don't have that kind of time for all this content. People have busy lives, and Game of Thrones hasn't even started up again yet. So that was the inspiration for this digest episode, which I'm calling BTB Digest. Even the name is shortened. The goal is to have a 20 to 30 minute episode with just the highlights of the previous episodes, with a focus on news you can use type information, things that are relevant to people who are using or developing Mediawiki. There'll probably be a lot less biographical information here. For this first digest, I'm just covering the first 5 episodes, so you won't get to hear clips from the interview with Darren and James of NASA or Dan Barrett of Vistaprint. This is an experiment, so we'll see how it goes. If it seems like something that people like, I'll probably do more of these down the line. So let's get to it. The first ever episode of Between the Brackets was with Cindy Chickalese, who is very involved in both the Wikimedia and the so-called Enterprise Mediawiki worlds. I asked her about the wiki setup that she helped to develop in her years at MITRE, and this is what she had to say.
At one point, we counted something like over 70 wikis that we had created. Wow. Some of which are still in use, others not. The first wiki that was widely used at MITRE actually was originally created by a different team, and that's Mitrepedia. And that's sort of a general wiki that anybody can add a page to about any topic that's useful to MITRE, and it's got quite a bit of content in it. It's been written about a few times. So Mitrepedia still exists as well. My team wound up taking over Mitrepedia when the original team moved on to other work. And so it became a suite of what we called the Gestalt extensions, which, was sort of our branded name for our team. It was started by Bernadette Clemente, actually before I joined the project. And still continues to this day.
In 2017, she left MITRE and took a job helping to oversee development of Mediawiki at the Wikimedia Foundation. Here she is describing her decision to move over.
The first thing is I was not looking to leave MITRE. I loved what I did. I loved working with Mediawiki. I loved helping our government customers. But I did see a job posting for looking for a product manager for the Mediawiki platform itself. And as you can probably tell already, I'm pretty passionate about the Mediawiki software. I think it's amazing software. The fact that it powers Wikipedia, which is, a wonderful knowledge resource for the world, is amazing. But it was written in a way to be flexible enough so that it could also, provided as open source so that it could obviously be used by other folks as well. And we were able to at MITRE, and I know a number of other people, including yourself, have been able to use Mediawiki for a whole host of different types of environments and applications to support knowledge management. And it's so I saw the opportunity to help to guide the future of Mediawiki as the product manager for the software. And one of the things that I believe is that, Mediawiki could have even greater reach, even greater market share than it does at this point, if a few fundamental things were to happen, if it were easier to install, upgrade, and maintain, and if there were, one of the things that is a goal of my position is to really define the roadmap of Mediawiki for the future. And that's something that the third-party community had been, those using Mediawiki outside of the Wikimedia Foundation had been asking for quite a while, and myself included. Where's the roadmap? We need a roadmap. I needed to be able to tell my customers when I was advising my government customers to use Mediawiki. They're like, okay, well, where will it be in 5 years? Is there going to be support? Is there going to be, am I going to still be able to run it on my hardware? And because very rightly so, Mediawiki is supported within the Wikimedia Foundation primarily for its use in Wikipedia, because that's what it was developed for, and Wikipedia by itself. If Mediawiki were only used for Wikipedia, it would be wonderful software, and it would, absolutely, be right in the world.
Right.
But there's an opportunity for more environments to share more knowledge with the world through the use of this wonderful software system. So, and I would like to see that happen. I would like to see more people be able to benefit from Mediawiki. And the more people that use the software and take different paths and avenues through the software, the more robust it becomes for its support of Wikipedia as well.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I think that there can only be benefit in having a wider use of the software. So I was really very excited at the opportunity to join the foundation and to serve in that role. So the future of Mediawiki is something that we're very much discussing right now at the foundation. We're at the beginning of a project where we're looking at addressing the architecture and making decisions on the future. And it's important that these architectural decisions consider also other users of Mediawiki as well as Wikipedia. And there are folks within the foundation, absolutely, who support that idea as well.
My next talk was with Nicholas Lackstrom of Helsinki, who probably more than anyone is responsible for the incredible state of Mediawiki's translation. I asked him about various options for translation in wikis, among them the Translate extension, which he's the main author of. I had to clip out some of my question because it was so meandering, which is why you at one point hear me talk about 4 or 5 translation options after I've only listed 4. The 5th one, if you're wondering, was creating auto-generated text based on just a database of facts. As far as I can think, there are 4 main ways of doing translation. First is the Wikipedia way, where you just have separate wikis for each language. And there are some tools to help with, creating a translation into a new language so you don't have to start from scratch for every language. But that's the basic idea, that they're independent. Number 2 is that all the content is in one wiki, but all the pages are independently created. Number 3 is using the Translate extension, where you have one master language, which I guess is almost always English. Well, not necessarily. But all the other content gets translated from that, and you have, suffixes and so forth for each translation, for each translated page. And then number 4 is just have one language and use a translation service like Google Translate to automatically do real-time translations, which there are a lot of browsers that support that. I actually helped create an extension that lets you do that within the wiki called Live Translate as part of a WikiWorks project a long time ago, but I don't actually know if that extension still works. Anyway, would you agree that those are the 4 or 5, if you want, standard ways of handling multiple languages in a wiki?
Well, first of all, there's no one single solution that would work for everyone. There are multiple different solutions, and it really depends on the context. Personally, I only use what you call number 3, I think, using the Translate extension.
Right.
But it's a little bit more nuanced because even that has 2 different ways to do it. And first one is the what we call translatable wiki pages, which we talked about earlier, which involves marking up the page with tags, like which parts will be translated, and that will create a possibility to translate the page, and the translations will appear as separate pages using the convention of /language code in the page name. But there's also another approach that is using the int magic word in Mediawiki, and that can refer to like translatable interface messages, but it can also be used for content. And with some effort, this can also be hooked up in translation interface, but the main difference is that using this method, it doesn't create separate pages, but like the language of the page follows what is the language of the user using the wiki. So again, it depends on the case, which one is better approach for given situation.
Yeah, okay, very interesting. Yeah, I did know about that int thing, actually. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's called unstructured content translation or something like that.
I also asked Nicholas about whether someone interested in using the Translate extension should always get the whole Mediawiki language extension bundle that it's a part of, and here's his response.
I would recommend the bundle unless you know what you are doing, because there are dependencies on Translate on other extensions like the Universal Language Selector, and those are useful in general, like you want people to be able to choose their language. So it makes sense to have them all.
In the next episode, I talked with Mike Carriasso, the co-founder and main developer of the wiki Snipedia, as well as its popular offshoot software for genetic reporting, Promethease. This was probably the hardest episode to summarize since we ended up covering so many topics. I'd encourage anyone to listen to that episode if you're interested in genetics or open science data. Here's Mike talking about starting to use the Semantic Mediawiki and Page Forms, then known as Semantic Forms, extensions on Snipedia, and how it is helping to build a massive data set that they're trying to compile.
So there was, let's say, 100 pages of SNPs and potentially 300 pages of genotypes. And it was just becoming super common for anybody who took a look at this site, who we tried to talk to about it, to say, how many SNPs are in Snipedia? And Semantic Mediawiki gave me a way of making a FAQ page and having an ask statement, and it would count the number of articles in the category and spit it out as a number, and it would update itself automatically. And this literally got rid of the single most common frequently asked question. So boom, we're throwing Semantic Mediawiki into the site. Well, we need to edit all of these SNPs, we need to edit all these genotypes, and there's kind of a structure we want to have to it so that the Promethease code can parse it back out in a meaningful way. And boom, here's this page forms extension, and it makes it that much easier. I mean, I'm the geek here. Greg is no slouch himself. He's can work a grep, but he's not a programmer. And giving him forms that were attractive and easy to customize with CSS and all the rest was a nice win, and again was meant to help open this thing up, because we're kind of staring at this mountain and saying, well, there's only 3 billion letters in the human genome, and it's really not going to get any bigger.
And for fans of open data and Wikidata, this next clip doesn't really talk about Mediawiki, but it makes a very interesting point about a low-tech approach to open science, the use of IDs within publications. For context, a SNP is part of a genome, and the U.S. National Institutes of Health automatically assigns a so-called RSID every time a new SNP is discovered, where an RSID is just the letters RS plus a number after it.
I said earlier, these SNPs have these RS1234 style number identifiers. Genes have much more messy names. and they get cute names, and they get different names in different organisms, and one gene is called FTO, and another is called MTHFR, and another called TCF7L2, and the problem is those names look like words. And so FTO could be an acronym for a million different things, and it makes natural language processing or text searching quite difficult for some of those gene names. And the beauty of these SNP names, RS1234, is I don't need fancy NLP techniques to find them.
Right.
I can write a regular expression that says RS/D plus, or a few variations on that because we know how many digits, and I can grep piles of text and find these things. And so they're not used as universally as we would like, but they're used pretty widely. And it's made a lot of bits of finding and connecting literature that would be quite difficult with these supposedly human-friendly names to be very difficult tasks that are trivially easy tasks for the SNP notation. And so another sort of takeaway lesson is to pick good names, and I think a couple alphas to indicate a sort of a category, and then just sequentially assigned numerics are a super powerful, underappreciated way of doing identifiers. And I wish anybody listening, whatever domain you're in, appreciate the importance of good names and the leverage you give yourself and others in downstream processing if you pick names of this sort.
Yeah, I think a lot of people listening will recognize that approach of an arbitrary increasing identifier number from its use on Wikidata.
Sure.
And who knows, maybe in the future, scientific papers and articles and so forth will have the Wikidata tag for each concept that they cover, which would be pretty cool.
I don't pray often, but that is one of the things I pray for.
In the fourth episode, I talked to Bernhard Krabina, who works at KDZ in Vienna, implementing Mediawiki for government use in Austria and throughout Europe. Here he is talking about what has been his highest profile project on the Vienna History Wiki.
The largest project that we did is the Vienna History Wiki. It was done for the city of Vienna for several departments. They had a German language encyclopedia about the history of Vienna in print, and it was old. And as Wikipedia has, I think, contributed to the death of encyclopedias. The same happened to the Vienna encyclopedia. No one had the time or the interest to update this. But the city of Vienna didn't want to have this this information lost, this knowledge about historical places, historical persons, and all that. So they wanted to do that on the web, and of course the best software for having encyclopedic information on the web is Mediawiki. So and as I was already as I had already done a lot of projects in this regard, I was happy enough to get this job to provide the structures for the Vienna History Wiki. It is hosted in the city IT, but I did the technical implementation, setting up all the structures, all the properties, and all that.
What's the scope of it? Do you know? I mean, like the number of pages and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, we started out. I think I have to look it up actually. With I think 20,000 entries, because they really were copy and pasted out from the printed publication. So the printed publication, they didn't have it electronically. They had to scan it in and OCR the thing, and it couldn't be imported automatically due to various reasons. So they had to per copy and paste paste the content to the wiki pages, and now we have more than 40,000 wiki pages. And it's I think as much visited as the Vienna as the website of the city of Vienna. Wow. So it's really a high traffic wiki, I think, and it's very successful. Not so many people not so many citizens are actively contributing. So these numbers could be higher, but it's very actively used by several departments also from the city of Vienna who have to do with historical facts, and it's very actively used.
Bernhard and I also talked about the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, which is a major EU regulation that is actually going into effect just 2 weeks from now. Bernhard helped develop a Mediawiki and semantic Mediawiki-based solution for storing GDPR-required data called Datencockpit, or Data Cockpit, which he talks about here.
You basically have to say, for example, we at KDZ are an NGO, and for example, we have a newsletter. For the newsletter, people submit their private data. We store their first name, their last name, and their email address, and we do that with on the KDZ website that is hosted in a German hosting company. So for example, this would be an example for a record of processing activities, and I have to document this, and if somebody complains about me or to the data protection authority, they can come to me and say, show me your documentation, what are you doing with the personal data, and I have to have that ready. Right. So this is really the big change that many countries face. The Germans not so much, because they already had that. So And this is why I think Mediawiki again comes in pretty handy, because it's again a documentation task inside your organization that is not only done by one or two persons, but maybe if you have bigger organizations with many departments, I don't know what the marketing department does for where they use private data or personal data. So they have to document that internally so that I have that ready in case I need it. So this is also what we are doing. We are providing a semantic Mediawiki configuration targeted for this documentation purposes of the general data protection regulation.
And for the last episode we'll cover, I talked to Brian Wolf, who does security for the Wikimedia Foundation. I asked Brian about a very popular request for Mediawiki, the ability to specify that some content is readable only by a certain subset of users.
In the Wikipedia context, of course, this is not something that's important, and I think that's why we're very weak on it. In Wikipedia, everyone can view everything, and that's the way it should be and the way it's designed to be. So the reason why we usually talk about read access when we're talking about access control is because other sorts of access control is implemented very well. In Wikipedia, when Wikipedia users need to protect pages and do lots of things for editing access and other types of access. So that's been worked out. With read access, since Wikipedia doesn't really need to do it, there's been a lot of kind of hacks put in place for better performance that assumes that basically there's only one group who can read everything equally. When it comes to how we cache and render pages, the cache is shared amongst multiple users, and it doesn't keep track of if all of them are allowed to view it versus if everyone in the wiki is allowed to view it.
Right.
So work would need to be done in order to make Mediawiki treat read access as a first-class citizen. And maybe that's something we should do, but I don't think it's a very high priority for the Wikimedia Foundation, given Wikipedia doesn't need it. So in terms of the best approach, separate wikis, ideally separate wikis on separate subdomains, because if you have, it depends a little bit if you have enabled the site JavaScript and user JavaScript features of Mediawiki. I believe site JavaScript's on by default, but user JavaScript is not. If you do that, like an administrator at the public wiki could add some malicious JavaScript to it, and if the private wiki is not on a different domain, that JavaScript could potentially read from the private wiki when being run by a user who has an account on both. So for best security on the two separate wiki front, it should really be separate subdomains in addition to just separate wikis. But yeah, that's the best solution so far. And maybe one day we'll be better at doing right access control in Mediawiki.
Yeah, read access control.
Read access, sorry, right.
Yeah, okay. So that's interesting. I mean, it's sort of both a technical question and a bigger question, which I guess is still technical. But because part of my thinking is, even if read access control were perfect, and it would be better if it were to the extent possible, it still might be too big of a risk to have both accessible and inaccessible content on the same wiki, just because there can be bad configurations and so forth.
Yeah.
I don't know if you think about that kind of softer kind of issue.
Well, when it comes to security issues, it's usually because somebody screwed up, right? At the end of the day, somewhere, and misconfiguration is a really common way to screw things up. So yeah, in terms of that, it is also more secure if you have separate wikis where you're less likely to mix up the configuration between the two. And with separate wikis also, you could more easily put them in separate databases with separate database users that aren't allowed to read the other database users' data. So even if Mediawiki is totally compromised, the sites are still isolated.
And for our final clip, I asked Brian about EMWCon, the Enterprise Mediawiki Conference, which we had both just attended, and where he was one of 6 attendees from the Wikimedia Foundation, which was the highest number who had ever shown up. Here he offered an explanation of why, as a Wikimedia Foundation developer, he's interested in interacting with the outside MediaWiki world.
Well, I actually went last year to it as well and really enjoyed myself. So that's part of the reason. I kind of, it's interesting to see kind of the other side of things. I hear about Wikipedia so often. It's nice to hear about what other people are doing. There was a bunch of people from NASA at this event, and it's cool to see NASA using MediaWiki. I don't know, it's just quite fascinating to hear what other people are doing. I also kind of wanted to, make MediaWiki security stuff kind of be known to a wider audience. It's kind of good just to get the name out, because if third-party users come across a security issue in MediaWiki, we want to make sure they report it. And I was hoping that by kind of showing up, they kind of will think about us if they come across anything sketchy in MediaWiki, because nobody can catch everything, and the more people looking, the better. Sure.
Well, I guess there's 2 aspects to that. There's, catching security issues in, official code, and then thinking more about security issues when designing one's own extensions.
Yeah, definitely.
And that seems like a very appropriate clip to end this episode on. I hope you'll tune in next time when we'll have another full interview. So long.